This is Tim Staten with Tim Stating the Obvious. What is this podcast about? It's simple. You are entitled to great leadership everywhere you go, whether it's to church, whether it's to work, whether it's at your house, you are entitled to great leadership. And so in this podcast, we take leadership principles and theories and turn them into everyday, relatable, and usable advice.
And a quick disclaimer. This show, process, or service by trademark manufacturer, or otherwise does not necessarily constitute an implied endorsement of anyone that I employed by or favors them in representation. The views are expressed here in my show are my own expressed and do not necessarily state or reflect those of any employer.
Hey, and welcome back to another episode of Tim Stating the Obvious. And in today's episode, we're going to be talking to another leadership coach, and his name is David Dodson. He goes by Dave, and I just kind of wanted to let you know that he is a business and executive coach. So if you're in the realm of looking for that type of coach, I think Dave might be a great fit for you. So Dave is a successful leader, coach, trainer, and speaker who is driven by his passion for helping others achieve their goals and dreams. He is a John Maxwell certified speaker, trainer, and life coach, as well as a Focal Point certified business and executive coach. He's a Marine Corps veteran and a father of 5. David has spent the last 24 years coaching, leading, and training and motivating sales and operations teams in the home building and senior leader industry. Dave believes that the path to success begins with intentionality and a desire to be excellent. He uses the Focal Point methodology and curriculum to help his clients achieve that success by focusing on 3 pillars of clarity, growth, and leadership. Let's go now to our conversation that we had with David. Hey, Dave, I appreciate you joining us today on the show. Thank you for coming on. And I know we just introduced you kind of in the intro, but if you don't mind, so everyone can hear it from your words, how did you get into the coaching business and into this industry?
Listen, thank you so much. Hey, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. You know, I'm a Marine Corps veteran, father of 5, and I was in the after the Marine Corps, I went into the senior living business for many years, and you know, the sort of interesting thing throughout my career, both military and civilian, has been that I've always sort of ended up in leadership positions. So I never really sought them out, but I always kind of ended up being funneled into leadership positions because I love to coach and I love to mentor. I love to train and build teams and cultures and things like that. So I really just kind of found myself in those positions. And so I went up through my career and finally ended up as a senior VP of sales and marketing with a national senior living company. And I loved the industry. I loved my position in there. But what I really want to do is just the coaching piece. Building teams and growing people, it was what I'd always loved. And so after a lot of soul searching, I took the leap and kind of jumped off the cliff a couple of years ago and said, okay, I'm gonna start my own coaching practice. And so I work with Focal Point business coaching and put together part of our franchise from them and put together my own coaching practice and have not looked back. I've really been enjoying it ever since.
Awesome. So from your Marine Corps background, how well do you think that has served you? Because I think service is incredibly important, and especially in the leadership space. And as we get into leadership and we start really kind of honing in on those type of subjects, we're there to serve people. So I kind of would like to expand upon, where you draw your inspiration from your prior service experience and how that correlates into your coaching and your teaching that you do today.
Oh yeah, well, that's a great question. Certainly, I'll tell you my military experience was definitely my inspiration for getting into coaching and leadership. The Marine Corps was the greatest experience of my life. I mean, it was absolutely fantastic. It made me who I am. I went in as a young man who dropped out of college because he was so scared that people were telling him he needed to figure out what he wanted to do with the rest of his life, and jumped into that and just blossomed and found out who I was. The Marines really taught me not only who I was, but who I had the potential to be. And I think that's one of the things that really impacted me was, in the Marine Corps, I found out that what I thought my limits were, what I thought my maximums were nowhere even near close. I could go way above and way beyond, where I thought I could go. And so it taught me that I could not only be good, it taught me that I could be exceptional. And so I ended up, graduating at the sort of the top of my classes in the Marine Corps and then in my MOS school after that. And, so I'm basically I figured out that I could do a lot more than I thought I could. And so that's really helped me as I've gone into my career to show other people and to demonstrate to other people that, hey, listen, what your limits are, your personal biases of where you think your limits are only exist in your mind, and you really can work past those, and let me show you how to get from here to there. And so that's what I've done. I took a lot of inspiration from my drill instructors. I took a lot of inspiration from other leaders that I knew in there. And I think the other part of it is that serving in the military is just that, it's service. And I think that's a big piece of what true leadership really is being able to serve other people and giving of yourself to contribute to a bigger whole.
No, absolutely. And I think selfless service and service to others is incredibly important, especially when we talk about servant leadership and as we get into that. But you hit on a key topic here, which was potential. And we often limit ourselves based on our perception of what our potential could be based on what other people see. So in the coaching space, if somebody's looking for a coach, a leadership coach, how important is that to have that outside perspective from your experience and working with clients? How have you been able to help people far surpass where they think they could go?
Oh, that's a great question. I'll say, the key to it is exactly what you said. People have this limit on their potential, and it's a personal bias that's been either instilled by themselves or by people they know, or just simply by having some failures. And I think so often those failures cripple people. They've had some failures, they haven't been able to achieve some things, and so they assume they start to sort of move their goalposts, kind of further back and assume that they can't achieve some of those things. From a coaching perspective, that's I think a lot of what coaches do is, at least a lot of what I do is help people, sort of get rid of those personal biases, or at least get a different perspective on those personal biases. So when someone comes and tells me they can't do something, my first question is always going to be, why can't you? What have you tried? And how has that played out? So I always want to try to knock down those personal biases, and I always want to try to help people understand that potential is whatever they choose it to be. It's one of the things that Brian Tracy, a lot of the focal point material and curriculum is based on Brian Tracy's writings, and it's one of the things he talks about is that your potential is really up to you, and you get to decide what you want to achieve. And if you dedicate yourself to it and you focus on it, you can achieve it, because you think about it every day, you talk about it every day, you put yourself in the position mentally of, hey, I'm getting to this goal, and you're going to manifest that goal by recognizing opportunities throughout your day that seem serendipitous, but are really you just being perceptive of the things that you want.
So I guess, how does it look then? Let's say somebody's never, talked to a leadership coach, has no clue of where to start other than, hey, I'm trying to do this thing. I know I have some deficiencies and shortfalls. I see myself moving my goalpost short on myself just so I know that I can meet an easy goal versus where I know I should be. So how does that first interaction look when they, find your website, they find your contact information, they reach out to you? What does that first interaction look like?
The first interaction is really a conversation. It's a lot of me getting to know them and getting to know their situation and what's going on. And what I really look for when I'm talking to somebody is I look for the gap between where they are and where they want to be. And sometimes when I hear that gap, I'll challenge it a little bit. If it seems like there could be even more, I'm like, is that as far as you want to go? Is that as much as you want to achieve? Is that the income, that you're sure you want to achieve? And then the other part of that conversation is, what does it mean to you if that happens? What changes in your life? Let's say, your revenues are hitting 150,000, and you want your revenues to hit 300,000. Well, what's going to change in your life if that happens? What's the difference? Or maybe it's 1 million, then 3 million, whatever the differences are. How does that affect you personally? And not just from a business standpoint, but personally, what does that do to you and to your life? Does it give you more time in your day? Does it give you more ability to do things with your family? Does it give you peace of mind that the business is growing, right? So now you have the opportunity to look for other things and other ways to grow revenue. And, what are the things how it affects you personally? And then the other part is okay, so what does it take to get from here to there? what do you think? What in your expert opinion? Because I'm usually not the expert in whatever their business is, because I'm not the expert in every business out there. I'm the expert in having, figuring out how to get your potential from inside of you and get it out of you and find your inner genius and put it to work. So a lot of times what I find is you've got individuals that know what they need to do. They know how it's going to affect them, but they've not tried it. And they've not tried it for some reason. Maybe they're scared, maybe they're nervous, or maybe they just don't believe they can. And so you have to be able to give them, and you have to be able to find a way to take that potential energy inside them and turn it into kinetic energy that gets them moving towards their goal. And that's what coaching is all about.
Okay. So you talked about the getting your potential energy and moving it to kinetic energy. What do you see as the biggest shortfalls when it comes to, your clients when they come in? What are the biggest psychological barriers that stick out to you the most? Like, what are those biggest trends?
The biggest psychological barriers, I think, some of them I see, I see a lot of people that it's a time management issue, right? So they're so busy doing everything else that they really don't have time to focus on the one true thing that they really should be doing that can grow their business, right? So maybe they've gotten into their business and they become so hectic with everything that's going on because they're trying to make sure every level of their business is running the right way, rather than possibly letting the employees that are supposed to be running those levels, do what they're supposed to do. And so consequently, they're so busy that they can't focus on that one thing. That's a big one. I see also a lot of people that again, don't believe they can make a difference. I see this a lot also in executive coaching, because I do a lot of executive coaching as well as entrepreneurial business coaching. A lot of executives are scared to go to that next level because, one, they're comfortable where they are, they're secure where they are, and they're really afraid that they may not have what it takes to go to the next level, or that people are going to perceive them as being overreaching or overbearing or impertinent to want to go the next level up. So that's another big one, I think, too, is just that fear of trying, or that lack of belief in themselves to make something happen.
So I want to kind of hone in on this lack of belief that people think they can do it. So I don't know if you've noticed this or not, but sometimes in my line of work, you find incredibly successful people and they reach a level and they go, I don't think I can reach it to the next level. And there seems to be this pervasive self-doubt that continuously creeps in. Or maybe somebody comes from like a different background that's probably not traditional, and they've made it a way and to be successful, but they still have this lingering self-doubt, like maybe I don't have the right background to continue to move forward. So how do we get people out of that mindset?
Well, what you're talking about is the imposter syndrome, and it's a very common psychological, malady that affects all of us, I think, at some point to some degree. Don't have, like you said, the background or the education to do this. And really, I think, what it comes down to is you need to get people to focus, first of all, on their successes, and you need to get them to see what they've done so far. A lot of times the path ahead becomes a lot clearer when you look at where you've been and what you've done, and you can see, if you look at your background, and I'll do this with somebody, I'll say, hey, let's walk the cat back here a little bit, and let's look at where you've been and what you've actually accomplished and how you accomplished that. And when they start to see those accomplishments that they've had, a lot of times that really helps them to say, hey, you know what? I didn't think I could do this either. I didn't think I could climb this hill and go over this cliff. I didn't think that I'd be able to do that. But I was. And also when you do that, when you go back and you revisit your successes, boy, you get that dopamine hit again, right? You get that feeling of, hey, I've done something great. And you use that energy to start kind of strategizing about your next step and where you're going to go next.
Okay. And what about the other aspect that you talked about where they're worried about the perception of others? They're worried that, oh, I might be perceived as overreaching. How common is that in the limiting factor of somebody?
I think it's actually fairly common in the executive world. And I think, a lot of it comes down to, sometimes it comes down to the leadership of the organization and what the culture of the organization is, because let's face it, there are some organizations that foster, culture of doubt and a culture of distrust, and that's not good. So if that's the case, then they definitely want to maybe think about whether they're in the right place to grow. But if it's a good culture, then opportunities to speak to supervisors, to speak to peers, to speak to your direct reports, and talk to them about how they perceive you. Sort of do a 360 analysis of who you are and what your skills are and what your abilities are. And if you want to go to that next level, the people around you, if you're good at what you do and they like who you are and they like the way you behave at work and your work ethic and your abilities, they're going to help you get to the next level. If it's a good culture that fosters internal growth and personal growth. And I think that's kind of the main thing is people kind of forget that there are other people around them that are influential to their careers, and they don't have to make all these decisions themselves. And sometimes I think when people actually start doing that and start talking to the people around them, they find that, hey, we thought you were ready for a move a long time ago, but we didn't think you felt you were ready to do it or didn't want to do it. And so that's why you haven't moved up. So, I mean, just having those conversations and letting people know that, hey, this is my goal, this is my path, my trajectory that I want to get to. How can I get there? Is there something you can recommend that I can be doing to go from here to there? And I think that's how to grow healthily within an organization.
No, that's very insightful, because I'm just wondering how many people out there that are actually listening right now that are like, you know what, I fit in these two categories, and I could benefit from a coach. Maybe I'm hindering myself.
Right. I think a lot of people, I think, have a misconception about what a coach does. I think a lot of people think that, again, a coach is going to come in and teach them how to run their business. And I can't teach you how to do run an injection molding company or a motorcycle, assembly plant or anything like that. But what I can teach you how to do is how to tap into the resources around you, how to figure out where you want to go. Look at get some clarity on your current situation, some clarity on your goals, and some clarity on the pathway to get from where you are to where you want to be. And that's what a coach does. If you look at, all the great athletes in the world, they all have one thing in common. They've all had coaches. They've all had great coaches that have taken them from where they were to where they went. And the thing is, those coaches are not they're not as good a golf player. They're not as good of a boxer, not as good of a basketball player as the people they've coached. But they understand the strategies. They understand the different things, the different nuances of the game, and the different things that the person can work on to better themselves to get to that next level. And that's really what you should be looking for. If you're in business or you're an executive, looking for in a coach is who can hone me and make me the best version, help me make myself the best version of myself to accomplish the goals that I want to achieve.
No, absolutely. And I kind of view a coach as, if you look at the boxing ring or if you look at any type of UFC fighter, if you're the business guy or the business gal, you're in the business, you're in the ring, and you're getting punched in the face all the time, do you have that person on the outside who can kind of have a different perspective, who's not in the middle of it, who's not getting punched in the face, who's not getting worn down physically, and goes, hey, you know what? You might want to duck every 2 or 3 punches and then throw a left jab. Or you might want to do this and then throw a right jab. You'll be more successful. And give you that pep talk of, and so I think coaching is great. And so,
okay. Oh, no, I was just going to say, yeah, you're absolutely right, because what happens so often with me is I'll sit there and I'll have someone explaining a situation, explaining a scenario that they've just been through, and that maybe was unsuccessful or wasn't as fulfilling as they wanted to, and they'll tell me that, okay, here's what. Let me tell you what I just heard you say. I just heard you say this, and this. Now, did you also observe these things that were going on outside of it? And let's talk about those. And that's exactly what it is, because those are those left jabs or those ducks or those weaves that they needed to be doing that they haven't been doing. And now we can talk about, okay, so next time this scenario comes around, let's talk about how we're going to approach it differently.
Right. No, that's hugely insightful. So for anyone listening, if you're looking for a coach, I would offer up, take a look at Dave, take a look at what he has to offer, and take a look at all the things that he has in his kit bag. So in the description down below in this episode, you're going to have all his links to everything. So that way, if you're looking at this and you're like, you know what, I really need a coach. I really need someone outside that ring to help me get a different perspective, to help me take my potential energy and my potential to help me reach my full potential. Go ahead and look at those down below and reach out to Dave. I'm sure he'll be more than happy to talk to you and bring you in on there. So Dave, before we wrap this up, I just kind of want to toss it over to you. And is there anything that you want to say as the last parting word?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Tim. I really enjoyed being on with you today. If anybody's out there that's thinking, hey, I'm stuck where I'm at, I don't know how to move forward here, and I'm not sure what it looks like on the other side. Or if you're out there and you're saying, hey, I'm doing really well, I don't feel like I'm killing it as well as I should be able to. I want to be able to do even better. Both of those scenarios are perfect. A business coach, an executive coach, a life coach, whoever you need to talk to. The key is don't just sit there and try to do it yourself. Having somebody else outside of your perspective to be able to look in and to be able to say, hey, listen, you're missing some of the scenery around you. Let's look at some of this stuff because it could be very helpful to you. That's what I would say is recommend reach out to somebody, find yourself a coach, and see if you can become the best version of yourself.
No, absolutely. Dave, hey, I really appreciate you taking your time out of your busy schedule to come talk to us today and share your wealth of knowledge on this and clarify what coaching really is and the importance of that. So thank you so much for hopping on and talking to us today.
My pleasure, Tim.
As always, thank you for stopping by and listening to this episode, and I really hope that you enjoyed it. Before we go, I would like to ask a favor of you, if I could. If you could please share this episode with one or two people who you think might like this topic. If you haven't followed or subscribed on the platform that you're listening to this on, please hit that button and the alert icon so that you know when we post another episode. If you got some value out of this episode, please leave a review or a comment so we can help spread the show to people who just haven't found the show yet, but are interested in the same topics that you are. Again, thanks for stopping by. I'm Tim Staten, stating the obvious.